Police officers put their lives on the line every day to keep us, our families, and our communities safe. They put themselves into situations most of us would run away from and see things on a daily basis that one could not possibly imagine. Hello, and thank you for listening to my podcast. I am your host, Victoria Costa, and today I am interviewing my dad, Mark Costa, who was a New York City police officer for 20 years of his life, risking and putting his life on the line every single day for those who lived and still live in the Big Apple. To know the ins and outs of what my dad has been through in his police officer career, as well as what it takes to be a cop in today's day and age, stay tuned until the very end. What is your name and where were you assigned?
My name is Mark Costa, and I was assigned I was in 4 different precincts throughout my 20-year career. I started off in the 5th precinct in Manhattan, which covers the Chinatown area. Then I was transferred to the 106th precinct in southeastern Queens, which covers Ozone Park, Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and Howard Beach. Then in 2004, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, and I was assigned to the 66th precinct in Brooklyn, which covers Borough Park. And then I transferred to the 114th precinct in 2008. I transferred there, and that covers the Astoria area, Woodside, Long Island City.
Okay, and you said that you were a cop for 10 years and then you were promoted to being a sergeant. So what is the difference between a cop and a sergeant?
Okay, a cop responds to all 911 calls. A cop is assigned to patrol duties, and they handle your everyday 911 calls like disputes, crimes in progress, car accidents, aided cases where people are injured, all kinds of crimes in progress like robberies, shootings, stabbings. Cops respond to those locations. They assess the situation and determine whether or not there's a crime has in fact been committed, because a lot of times when people call 911, they don't explain to the dispatcher the circumstances, and when the cops arrive at the scene, it's completely different than what was originally called into 911. So they have to determine if there was a crime and what kind of crime based off of the law in New York State, because every state has their own penal law, and also police department procedure. As a supervisor, your job is obviously harder. You have to supervise your day-to-day operations out in the street. So typically, a sergeant comes into work. There's a schedule that is waiting for them. There's always 2 sergeants or 2 supervisors working on a particular shift, sometimes 3. Could be a lieutenant and a sergeant, or a lieutenant and 2 sergeants. So typically there'll be a schedule, which is called a roll call, and you don't know when you come in if the schedule or the roll call is the same as when it was first put out. Because people will call in sick, people will call in for emergency days. So you now have to juggle the schedule to have enough cars out in the street and in the field to answer the 911 calls. Then once the shift starts, you do a roll call, give the cops their assignments, and then they start answering their 911 calls. And then you have to be able to supervise if they go to a serious incident, like somebody who gets shot, somebody who gets stabbed, somebody who might have gotten involved in a serious car accident. You have to respond to those because they'll request you, but you also have to, as part of your job, you have to respond regardless. And once you get to the scene, if there, something serious did occur, you have to set up what's called a crime scene with tape, rope off an area, and coordinate, shutting down streets, shutting down locations, and then calling for detectives to come to the scene to process.
All right. And did you always want to be a cop? And if not, what motivated you to become a cop?
That's funny. I don't know if I had always wanted to become a cop. I graduated high school. I went to college. Then I started a job in a bank. Believe it or not, I was there for about 6 years. And I think just one afternoon, I was looking through a local newspaper back in New York City, and I saw a notice for an exam for police officer. And I think that's what made me take the test. I don't think it was something because I had been the only cop in my family. So it wasn't something where I grew up where my dad was a cop, my uncle was a cop, my cousins were cops. I was first generation. So I don't think it was anything that, because I don't think it was anything family related. I think I just saw the advertisement and decided to take the test.
And what type of qualities do you think you need to be a cop? And who do you think is qualified to be a police officer in today's day and age, especially?
Well, anybody with enough training, you can become a good police officer, but you have to, you have to get the fear out of your head. I don't know if you ever get it out of your head, but you have to realize that no situation is the same. Every call is different. It's not a routine assignment every day. Going to calls, pulling cars over is extremely dangerous. There was just an incident a couple of days ago, I believe it was in Brooklyn, where two police officers pulled a car over, and the guy got out of his car and he threw, I believe it was some sort of a flammable liquid at the cop.
Yeah.
And they chased him, and then he threw a Molotov cocktail at them. So, no call is quote unquote routine, even though you might think it's routine. An example would be you go to an alarm that's ringing at a house or a business. 99% of the time, those are alarms that maybe are false alarms, but there's always going to be the one time where maybe somebody is breaking into the house or breaking into the establishment. So you have to be prepared for that. So no call is ever routine.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned about the cocktail that was thrown in the cop's face, because that's actually Mom's friend's cousin who was the cop, and he is fine now. His vision is back and everything, and you just don't know, I guess, as a cop what you're going to be running into that day or that night. Going to a car and criminal's there and he pulls a gun on you or throws a cocktail at you or something. You just don't know what's going to come your way. So you're putting your life on the line.
No, and they'll always tell you in the police academy that pulling over cars are probably the most dangerous thing that a cop does, because you might be pulling a car over for a traffic infraction, okay? A perfect example is what's going on in the news right now with what happened in Minnesota last week. And, turns out that the kid had a warrant out for his arrests for a gun. So you're pulling a car over in that situation, it was a registration that was expired. So, you could pull a car over for somebody being on a cell phone. You could pull a car over because they rolled through a stop sign or they didn't have a seatbelt on. And, you're pulling a car over for that reason. But that person, they probably think you're pulling them over because they have a warrant. So that car stop can go very bad very quickly. So, that's why they always tell you your car stops are dangerous. So, again, you're pulling a car over for a traffic reason, and they know they have a warrant, so they think you're pulling them over because of the warrant, when it's not true. So, what does it take? Yeah, it does take courage. It does take guts. You're going to be away from your family for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, depending on how long your shift is. You're working holidays until you get some seniority, and then you don't work the holidays. But you have to be prepared for to see things that you've never seen before. Especially again, if you've grown up in a decent neighborhood, you're probably not going to see shootings. You're not going to hear about stabbings and whatnot. And now all of a sudden you're thrown into a busy urban area like New York City or Chicago or something, and now you're going to see things that you've never seen before, and you got to be prepared. You got to have a strong stomach to see blood, to see people that have been shot and killed and run over by vehicles, and they're lifeless. So you have to get away from that.
And yeah, exactly. I agree with you. It's definitely scary. And, do you have any type of incident that you went to that you still remember to this day that was beyond scary? Can you give us an example of what you've been through, or one of the scariest incidents you've been through or been to?
Well, again, with my experience, over the course of 20 years, that there have been many calls that I still remember that I went to, either as a cop or a supervisor, that stick in my mind, because those are the type of calls that you'll always remember, especially when you're talking about, people who've been, killed, or maybe somebody passed away in their home or their apartment, and you need to go there because you have to supervise the scene. Even if they passed away of natural causes, you still have to go there. So there's always going to be calls that you're going to remember, but obviously, clearly, anybody that was a cop or a supervisor for 9/11 is going to remember that day, because that was, the darkest day in American history. I was off that day, but I went into work. But that's a day that nobody will ever forget, because of the magnitude of how many people were killed and how many people continue to die of illnesses, and just what you saw when you went down to the World Trade Center site, just to see two 210-story buildings that just crumble down like accordions, debris and dirt and dust, and just stuff that you would think you'd see in a movie, and you were reliving it, living it in real life, and continue to relive it today. So of all the calls, certainly the 9/11 was the one that would stick in my mind the most.
And since you were off that day, what was your job duty when you went into the city?
We everything was chaos that day. Obviously, it was unprepared. Everybody was unprepared for it. So you just kind of went in, and you went to your precinct that you were assigned to, and you waited around until you could get on to city buses, believe it or not, because the police department just doesn't have that many vehicles that could transport that many people at one time. So I went in. At the time, I was in the 106th precinct. I went in there, and we waited around. We got dressed, and we were put on city buses, brought into the city, and we were mustered up, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, under the FDR Drive down on the Lower East Side. And then I believe we were then sent to, I think I was somewhere in the Village, but we were assigned traffic duties, shut down streets to cars, vehicles, and pedestrians, just to keep people out that were not authorized to be there, because emergency vehicles and whatnot needed to get into the area.
So how long were you gone that day for? How long were you not home?
I think I was gone for 24 hours.
24 hours.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you looked like when you came home? Like, you didn't have your uniform on you, I assume? Did you have debris all on you? Do you remember that?
If I remember correctly, I think I put my uniform in a bag in the precinct, because it was so covered in dirt and dust, so I didn't want to take that home. So I think I wound up throwing that out. So yeah, I think that's I mean it's 20 years ago, but I do believe that it was covered in so much soot and debris that I wound up throwing it out because I didn't want to bring that in the house. I didn't want to put it in the washing machine, so I think I just tossed it in the trash.
Oh, wow. That is insanely scary. I couldn't imagine what you went through as well as the other police officers and first responders were going through that day. Because we're running short on time, I'm going to ask you one last question. As we know, in today's world, cops are targets. They are targets of violence. Do you have any, anything to say to those who want to become a cop in today's world? Do you have any advice to them?
If if you want to become a cop, I would say it's still a great profession to get into. Unfortunately, what is going on right now and what's been going on for the past number of years to me is disgraceful and totally unnecessary. Unless you've been put in cops' shoes, okay, it's easy to judge from the outside, okay. Everybody makes a mistake, okay. I understand that, all right, but the difference between, you could go into a McDonald's and they make your order wrong, okay, that's one thing. Cops have to be right pretty much 100% of the time, okay, and I understand mistakes are made, but everybody's human, okay, and but the way cops have been portrayed by activists and the media certainly, okay, in this country, just is totally disgraceful and wrong. I just wish that there would be outrage, in the inner cities when, there's 30, 40, 50, 60 people shot in an urban area over the course of a weekend, like there is when a police officer shoots somebody. I'm watching the news now recently, and and I see again what was going on, in Minnesota and protests in other parts of the country. I just wish that this anger would be the same towards, the gangbangers and people that slaughter people in cities like Chicago and, Newark, New Jersey and Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. Just, have outrage in those areas. Again, the summer's coming. Unfortunately, there's going to be, bloodshed in these areas and other urban areas. And, I just wish that athletes and actors and actresses that all come out, when the police are involved, will voice their voices when, again, there's the slaughter of 2, 3, 4 dozen people over the course of a weekend. Cops are there to do a job. When you're in trouble, you're calling 911. You're not calling your neighbor. You're not calling your cousin. You're not calling your best friend. You're calling 911. So the same people that you vilify are the same people that you call when you need. And the cops are going to show up. They're not going to think about, okay, is this guy, is he white? Is he black? Is he Hispanic? Is he, is he gay? Is he straight? They're not going to think about this. They're going to go to the job. They're going to handle it and do what they have to do, handle it accordingly, according to their procedures and the law, and they're going to go away. Okay, so, we as cops, and I'll always be a cop, we're there for everybody. We're there for the community that we don't even know. We're there for the business people that work in the community that we don't know. And, I just wish that, people would lay off and just let the cops do their jobs. Are mistakes made? Yes. But you're never going to get a cop to defend another cop that does something wrong if they do it wrong purposely. I'll be the first one to say that. What happened with George Floyd last year should not have happened. That cop was wrong. He got arrested for it. He should probably go to jail for it. Okay, see what the jury says. But he was wrong. he should not have done what he did. You're always taught once handcuffs go on somebody, no matter what they did prior to that, you stop. Handcuffs go on, you lay off. So that cop should get jail time, according to the law in the state of Minnesota.
And I agree with you on that. I'm sure there's tens and thousands upon millions of people in today's world that agree with what you have to say. That concludes my podcast. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. So thank you for your time, Dad. And yeah, enjoy your day. Thank you.